It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Podcast, available on iHeartRadio every morning and also on Spotify and Apple and wherever you get your podcast from. It is a Thursday morning, yes, the 8th day for September of 2022, and I don't know if you've noticed that over the last week there seems to be positivity in the air, with a lot of sales around the country scoring some pretty hot and decent prices, and the general mood appears to be upbeat. But is that surprising, given that it's like a light switch on the first being turned on as we launched ourselves literally into September and spring? But whatever it is, the mood of real estate agents who I've been talking to this week claim that they feel the market is stabilising and plateauing. So here's the question: is it an anomaly, or is the tide really starting to shift? I'll be very interested to see what happens this weekend with auctions, because that will be a great barometer check if auctions continue to build on from last weekend. Well, coming up, we are pulling in very shortly to Rockhampton on our road trip. It's taken us a while, and Jason really didn't know whether we were going to make it or not. We'll be talking to Jason in just a moment.
It's your weekday real estate breakfast with news, interviews and predictions every morning on the Real Estate Podcast.
And if you're celebrating your birthday on this 8th day for Thursday, you're in pretty good company if you like Pink. She is turning 43, the American singer, and sticking with female singers, Kylie Minogue on this day back in 2001, she released her most successful single ever, I Just Can't Get You Out of My Head. There's a trip down memory lane. Also on this day, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert makes its debut. Now, if you had have asked me when David Letterman finished up with The Late Show, I would have said probably around 3-4 years ago. I would not have picked 7 years ago. Also on this day, President Ford pardons Nixon. That happened back in 1974. And if you're a Trekkie like me, Star Trek makes its television debut on this day, and that happened in 1966.
We talk with leading property commentators with analysis, predictions, forecasts and what's trending every morning from 6:30. It's the Main Centre Forecast with PRD, selling smarter every day.
Well, coming up next, if you've wondered what the Rockhampton real estate is all about, we'll be doing that in just a moment. First, checking on your weather around Australia. First, we go to Sydney, expecting a late shower or two, a high of 21 degrees. In Melbourne today, also unfortunately, the showers are with us. 19 though, fairly warmish conditions. In Brisbane, expecting partly cloudy but dry weather. 23 is your forecast high. And in Perth today, for our Thursday morning, expecting partly cloudy conditions and a high of 19 degrees.
We are just as addicted to property as you are. Every weekday morning from 6:30. It's the Real Estate Podcast across Australia, 7 days a week.
Well, earlier last week, we were talking about the Sunshine Coast, and then, of course, we went to Hervey Bay. Now we're going to go even further north and find out what is happening in Rockhampton. And we're speaking to Jason Raynor from the Mr. Real Estate Rockhampton. And a very good morning to you, Jason. Welcome to the Real Estate Podcast.
Good morning, Craig. Great to be on the show. It's bright and sunny up here as always, mate.
So spring is in the air. Rockhampton, as you said, it's nice and warm. So how are you faring at this very moment in terms of sentiment from both buyers and sellers in Rockhampton?
Look, we've experienced probably the best 2 years I've ever seen. I've been around for some 22 years in real estate. The area itself has just had so many new jobs with so many new people coming to the area. it just makes for a fantastic lifestyle. And I think a lot of the workers that come here to work actually find living here such a pleasure, and before you know it, their family comes up, they buy a house, and it just feeds from that. So it's been a wonderful 2 years, and it's going from strength to strength. There's been no slowdown. Even with the interest rates moving, it's still pumping along nicely.
So what about the median house price there, Jason? What is that standing at the moment?
Craig, it rests somewhere between 320 and 340, and that's for a 600 square metre block. We have low-set brick homes here that you can still buy for around the 350, but the average house here, they call them like a house on stilts, brick base, hardy plank top. They're going for about 350 to 400. You can still get good buys in the 300 range, but they probably need a bit of tender loving care. Most suburbs in Rockhampton are getting good prices, 300 plus at the moment, which is probably extraordinarily cheap when you look towards the bigger capitals of Australia.
Well, I was just going to say, if that is the median house price now and you've gone through the boom, what was a house, on a block that you've just quoted there around that 650, 70 square metres, what sort of money was that, say, 3 years ago?
If you use, say, 340 as an example, those properties would have been 280. So you could have picked up a really strong investment pre-COVID, pre-February 2020, for probably 280, 270, and they would have probably seen, I believe, 15% growth over the last 2 years. If you do a little bit of work to them and make them perfectly presented, that growth would even be more enhanced. So the profit margin up here is fantastic right now.
Now, you were saying that there are a lot of people starting to come into the area. So over the last 3 months, what's been happening in that space?
Jobs galore. We've got the government funding the big new ring road, which is like a bypass which travels from Parkhurst through to Gracemere. They're building a big bridge across the river, another bridge, which will be the third bridge across the Fitzroy River. With that comes jobs, 400 plus men looking for residential rental properties. Our company here looks after about 1,100 residential properties, so we're fielding inquiries about that. You've got the Army up north as well. They're building a big new base. It's all top secret stuff, but we also help their employees find properties to rent. And in turn, like I say, a lot stay here and buy. We've also got the Rookford Weir, which is probably housing 200 men just to the west of Rockhampton. And also they're building a big Alliance aircraft hangar to service the planes out at our pre-international airport. They're getting it ready to go big. So there's a lot of work around. There's a lot of families coming into the area. That starts at the bottom, and then having the rent vacancy rate at probably like under 0.5%, we've only got 6 to 8 rental properties available out of 1,100 right now.
Wow. And what is the population of Rockhampton these days?
So Rocky itself has about 75 to 80,000. The big area, which encompasses Yeppoon and central Queensland, you'd probably push that out to about 120,000. But the amount of people visiting, it's just a constant stream of caravans coming from the south. And we're seeing them day in, day out. You can't get a caravan park unless you pre-book it in the central Queensland area.
And just before I let you go there, Jason, what sort of inquiries are you having, say, from the likes of Brisbane? I mean, are you having them further afield? Are you getting any inquiries from New South Wales and Victoria in terms of moving into the area?
Oh, absolutely. So for probably a good 18 months now, we've been getting many investors from New South Wales, Melbourne, around the Sydney area is probably most prominent. It's nothing to wake up in the morning and have 40 email inquiries on your phone. So the answer to your question is, I'd say, 10 properties being sold, there'd be 3 to 4 investors at the moment.
All right, well, we'll leave it there in the sunshine at Rockhampton this morning from Mr. Real Estate there. Jason, thank you for coming on to the Real Estate Podcast, and keep us up to date in terms of what happens over the next 6 months.
It'd be a pleasure, Craig. Thanks for having me on your show.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.